As frequent viewers know, one of our regular features is a sort of show and tell, where guests bring in something, could be a book, could be a photograph, who knows what. But it's important to them in some way. It says something about who they are and what they're about. Doctors, what do you have for us today? We'll start with you, Dr. Garrett.
So I have my Spin Peloton shoe. That's for my Peloton indoor spin bike. And I've been spinning probably for 20 years, fitness, and it's been very good for me mentally, physically. I encourage my patients always, whatever they can do, exercise for mental and well-being. And I'm addicted. Anybody who dares talk to me about the Peloton knows watch out, because I won't stop talking about it. So if a patient brings it up to me or anyone else, it becomes a very long conversation. But really, it's been a very meaningful thing for me to have it. I get up at 4 a.m, 5 days a week to exercise. It's my only me time. And it's kind of a cult following to have, you're competing against other people. There's a whole different instructors, music you choose. It keeps me mentally sane. And so that's why I brought this in today.
Okay. Doctor, what have you got for us?
So I brought in a bicycle helmet.
I don't wear a helmet when I'm on my spin bike.
First of all, I'm a neurologist and everybody should wear a helmet. I mountain bike. I'm terrible at it, but it's something that I've been passionate about. I did it when I lived in Baltimore on my own for a couple of years. Medical school was awfully busy, but I still found time to do some bicycling, and even did a charity ride from Boston to New York for HIV fundraising ride. Then afterwards, when I moved back here, I discovered there is a gem of mountain biking all around the city, about 30 minutes in any direction. There's just phenomenal parkland here. It is fantastic. So I like to get away from people. I don't like to compete. So I do this largely on my own, out in the woods. Last night, just out by our Hunt Valley Center, I did just about like a 6-mile loop. There's some trails right behind our Hunt Valley Center. Got down to the confluence of the Gunpowder River and the Beaver Dam River, saw 3 beavers down there, deer, toads were out, tree frogs were out. So I do it partly to keep myself fit, keep myself sane. The closest I get to spiritual really is out in the wilderness. And then I've done some things. There's an adapter on this for a light. So I've even done night rides with groups, usually for safety and legal permission. And then I've given back. I've done a fair amount of trail maintenance and trail building with volunteer organizations. So I've helped to build some of the trails I then get to ride on and give back a little bit. And they're used also for hikers and horseback riding and other things. So there's a really terrific community here for it. And a surprising number of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s still doing it. I've broken several bones. Some of those not my fault, but I still do it, and it's something I'm passionate about and love.
You won't break any bones if you ride the Peloton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you won't get to wear a cool helmet, or you'll look silly. You'll look silly. Yes.
Well, at my home, I have the elliptical, I have a rowing machine, and we have a stationary bike. But we have issues with the stationary bike, and maybe since you're both kind of doing a type of cycling, or either biking or cycling. My wife and I have both noticed that, with biking, sometimes there's a little bit of that neurological damage that can occur from sitting on the seat. And we have tried so many different kinds of seats and so many different kinds of padding and nothing ever seems to work. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, what can you do to be able to get those benefits? You're obviously doing it a lot, and you're doing it without any issues?
Well, for me, mine's a little different. I do very high-intensity brief rides. So it's maybe 30 minutes up and down, and I have padding.
Off the seat.
Up and down, and it's not hours. So it's 30 minutes of intense and then weights afterwards. So it's not a problem if you do it and you're, moving around.
So the road bikers do get into serious trouble, and they go through tons of saddles getting it. And the neuropathies that they can get, the focal neuropathies, are horrible. And there are nobody who specializes in that, or at least the people who do don't take insurance usually. So it's really a problem for some people. Mountain biking, a lot of it is floating lightly over your seat, using more of your legs. The seat is often just there so you know where your center of gravity is. Anything rough, I'm up off my feet, and climbing hills and things often off the feet. When I'm sitting, I'm flowing through easy trails usually, and not for very long stretches of time.
Well, obviously, these are things you like to do when you're outside of the hospital. Do you feel that you've been fairly successful in achieving a good work-home life balance? Because I know how busy physicians can be.
Truthfully, or
Truthfully, always truthfully.
I don't know any physician who could say that,
Yep.
and be completely honest. Personally, it's very difficult. I mean, we all work really, really, really hard, and there's not a lot of time. And so for me personally, in any free time I have, I try to be on 100% for my family. And so I do the best I can. It's not perfect. It's usually at the expense of my own wellness, because there's not much time for yourself. But I try to be present as much as I can. I have a rule: when I come home from work, I'm not on my phone when I walk in the door, which sounds like something very small, but it's actually a big deal when you're always on your phone and always doing work. And so I'm trying to be mindful to put it down when I walk in the door and be present and try to attend as many events as I can. I have a kid who's out of the house now, but, be there, be present when I'm there, and then work hard as hell the rest of the time. That's how it goes.
Any more success in getting that balance?
Not at all. And I don't know whether to call it balance or a juggling act, or there's a little bit of a dynamic equilibrium. You will go too far in one direction for a while, and then you will have to pull back, or there'll be a family crisis, or there'll be some disaster at work. And, so there's a lot of yo-yoing back and forth. Takes a family that's there for you as well as you being there for the family, I think, to do it right. We try to get away as a family relatively often. We try to go on hikes together. We do camping trips. We try to do a big vacation where it's just the family. We get away from everybody else every so often. But it's hard to find the time. Even teaching my daughter to drive, I thought that would be a very easy thing to find the time to do. But between her schedule and mine, it's been very difficult to find that time. Which is probably better for my long-term health. But yeah, I really don't know any doctor who says, yes, I found the balance, I found the recipe for doing this right. I think we all figure it out as we go, and different things work for different people, and there are different comfort thresholds. Our work is also a calling, and it's very easy to let that be all-consuming. Even by doing now, if you just do your job to the best of your ability, it will become all-consuming. So you have to be able to turn that off sometimes. So whether it's protected time at home, away from things or not, I try to do charting and things like that after my kids have gone upstairs. We do have a time at which we send the kids upstairs, and at that point, we do that. And then my wife and I try to arrange date nights and other things every so often, so that we get out and we get away together as well.
Now, Dr. Garrick, you have a daughter, Lexi, who has adopted something called Becca's Closet as a personal cause. Can you tell us about that?
So she and I, a year ago, started this local nonprofit chapter. Started in Florida about 20 years ago for a young woman who was collecting prom dresses and donating them to underserved population. And she tragically died in a car accident during her high school year. And her parents created this nonprofit in her name. And there are now over 50 chapters in the United States. So we applied for a chapter a year ago, and they granted us permission to have a chapter here. So this was our second year where we have collected new and gently used dresses. And then we hold an event, which we just held last week, to have girls come to try on prom dresses, pick a dress, and be able to go to prom for those who can't afford a prom dress, which it's been a really great experience for my daughter and I and me. And it's been a really just valuable experience for all of us. It's very important work. So,
well, what's it like being a fan of the Washington Commanders versus your husband's love of the Philadelphia Eagles?
That's a tough one. I will say that, and also my children, whom I gave birth to, also decided to be Eagles fans because my team was terrible when they were growing up. So I have 3 Eagles fans in my household. And even though I work really hard and I clean the house and do lots of other things, they chose to be Eagles fans. So it can be challenging. I will say that the Commanders have won 3 Super Bowls and the Eagles have only won 1. So I remind them of that every single time we have a worse record. I just say 3-1, and that's where I leave it. And I'm always hopeful there's always next year. That's how it goes down in my house.
Dr. Rosenberg, I'm going to mention a couple of names. Let's see if you can tell me something about them. The Pseudochris crucifer is the Hyla versicolor.
So I am not sure where you get your information from, but that's a little frightening. So these are frogs, and that was part of my biology interest, and I still sort of dabble in herpetology type things. I had pet frogs, Xenopus laevis, for those keeping track, which is an African clawed frog used in a lot of science research. There was a kit where you could raise a frog from a tadpole. I had one for 15 years or something like that. I had to lug it around all through college and medical school. That was mentioned as a possibility. It never happened. The Hyla versicolor is very loud, very cute little small gray tree frog that people don't even think we have tree frogs in Maryland. I actually heard them last night when I was out biking. They'll often call from low shrubs or bushes near water sources in the evening. They're just make lovely noises. And if you know what they are, you start hearing them everywhere. I usually try to time a couple of mountain bike rides for certain parks in early April-ish, so I can hear the toads, and sometimes I'll actually run into common toad, what are called mating balls, which are a very interesting thing. Toads will actually pile up on each other in sort of a mating frenzy in a shallow area of water. It's spectacular and crazy. You wouldn't believe that so many small little ugly critters will all be in one place at one time. And before that, I try to get out for the spring peepers as well. And there are a number of parks here where you can either hike to pretty easily or mountain bike in and hear the tree frogs call.
Well, Drs. Garrick and Rosenberg, I want to thank you for your time and your candor. I'm hoping our viewers enjoyed the chance to hear your stories and learned a thing or two, maybe something they can apply to their daily lives. And thank you for watching. On behalf of myself, our guests, the Mercy staff, and the Sisters of Mercy, we wish you good health and humor. And until we gather again, may the road rise up to meet you. So you lasted through the credits for Wait, Doctor, I Forgot to Ask. This is where we briefly discuss the question each physician wishes their patients would ask, but don't, or the most unusual hand on the doorknob question posed by a patient at the end of their visit. Doctors, what do you got for me?
I'll answer that. I'll have two questions. One, I will say, I'm not sure I have a question that I can think of someone doesn't ask. I encourage all my patients to ask questions. So, I end all my visit with the same sort of spiel. I'll say, let me tell you what I think, and then I'll let you ask questions. And so I tell them what I think, and I say, do you have any questions? Do you understand? So I recite everything. I ask them to tell it back to me, and then I say, do you have any questions? I'm not sure there's a specific question I can think of. To your second question, I have had someone before leave and ask me a question about their bladder because of urology, not neurology, and I have to explain to them that I'm not a urologist, and that happens. So,
but they're close.
I prefer not to be asked questions about bladder and urology, but I encourage my patients to ask questions, as many questions as they have.
I get asked a lot about things that I found on Google, and they are wild. The things that I get, not as quite as much as flat Earth type conspiracy things, but medical things that are so far out of anything rational or accepted that you almost don't know how to answer that. And what I tell my patients is that I'm available as a curator if they have questions, because there's so much knowledge out there. What you need is somebody to kind of rate the validity of that knowledge. And while I don't certainly know anything, and I don't know, even the scope of everything that's out there on the internet, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I think that part of our value as providers now, in an era where everybody has anything available at their fingertips or their phone instantly, is to help sort out the noise from the signal and to really make sure that you keep people on the right track. One I've run into for headache all the time is people putting a piercing in the dathe, which is an inner part of the ear. And there was a random Facebook post that went around about 10 years ago now, maybe even a little bit longer. Somebody asked a neurologist in an interview, what do you think about people getting dathe piercings for migraines? And this neurologist was taken aback and said something to the effect to the reporter of, well, I suppose it can't hurt. That became a Facebook story that dathe piercings cure migraines. And I saw dozens and dozens of people who had had their cartilage pierced trying to think that it was a medical procedure or a benefit. I still run into them. And we kind of joke about it now because they know too now that it was sort of exposed as a myth later. But that was one that I would just get asked over and over again. Or I actually had patients coming in say that were angry, said, I got this piercing. Did they do it wrong because my headaches aren't cured? So that's one of the things that just keeps coming back. It's just one of these things that we can't get rid of. And no, piercing your cartilage does not cure a health condition. I will say I had one patient, that one of my best patient encounters ever. I come into the room and this poor woman was so nervous. She looked really upset. And I said, are you okay? What's wrong? You're here for dizziness, right? And she said, yeah, but I did something really stupid. I went onto YouTube and I started Googling, and I went to YouTube and I looked up my symptoms, and they said it was crystals in my ear, and then I found an exercise that could fix it, and I did it, and I feel better. Is that okay? And she actually had done everything right. She had gotten the right information from the right sources on the internet, did the right self-exam. Based on that exam, she had looked up on YouTube the right exercise to cure herself. She had diagnosed and cured herself, didn't really believe it, thought she had maybe done something wrong or missed something, and the entire appointment was me reviewing with her. No, you did absolutely everything right. It is the exception. It is the exception to the rule, but it was one of my most memorable patient visits.
Most of the people are finding things that are erroneous or misinformation. It's unfortunate. I mean, and I try to guide people and say, look, if you're going to look things up, I said, use these websites. These are reputable websites, and try to guide them. Everyone's going to look things up, and so you can't expect. And sometimes I actually ask patients, you've been reading, what diagnosis are you concerned about, and either confirm or refute their diagnosis. A lot of times people come in with a preconceived notion. I have this because I've read about it. Sometimes I can easily dispel that, or I say maybe you're right. Sometimes the patient is right, but try to guide them and to which websites are good, which websites are not. That's important too.
Doctors, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.